नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य नमो तस्य
Bhagavato Arahato Sabba Sambuddhassa.
सम्बुद्धस्य
Sadhu,
So,
sadhu, sadhu.
Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. As we are studying the interesting part of the Buddha and his Dhamma about what is not Dhamma. And through a succession of study classes, we have seen what is the Dhamma and very many definitions of the Dhamma. And today we are going to look at the second chapter of the part 4 of what is not Dhamma. And we are going to look at the chapter 2, which is titled here as Belief in Ishwara, God, is not essentially part of Dhamma. So what does it mean that when we talk about Ishwara? Because the idea of God is so prevalent in almost all the religions, whether they are Abrahamic religions like Christianity or Judaism or Islam, or it's the Brahminical religion like Brahmanism itself or Hinduism. There is a concept of a God. And here the Buddha is categorically rejecting the concept of God. And elsewhere we have seen that Buddha was supposed to be silent on the question of God, but it's not like so, that Buddha has categorically denied the presence of Creator. And that's why this particular section becomes very important for us to look into deeply. So there are many questions that comes to people's mind, and one of the questions that arise in the minds of the people is how does the word created, and how the word is going to end, what happens to the what is the origin of the word and what is the end of the word. To the Buddha, these questions are flamboyant questions. They arouse our curiosities so much so that we get entangled into the web of these speculative questions, which are very flamboyant, and they draw our immediate attention because these questions are very interesting. But the Buddha says the answer to this question doesn't solve the existential problem of human suffering. And he says that the question of God or the creator or about the world, has to be dealt with by the methods of inquiry. And therefore, this question of who created the world is a very common question in the world. All religion try to attempt to answer that question, and they mostly tend to become speculative. And the answer given to this question, that who created the world, is the God. And we know that even the concept of God has historically undergone many changes, as we have seen in the study of philosophy of Hinduism, the book written by Ambedkar, in those classes, as to how the concept of God even underwent a lot of changes. Even today, whatever is the concept of God today was not the same concept that existed before. So, but the common answer remains that the God is the creator of the world. So, for example, as Baba Ambedkar puts it, in the Brahminical scheme, the God is known by various names. So, like Prajapati, Ishwara, Brahma, or Mahabrahma. And and to the question who this God is and how he came into being, there is no answer. So, for example, the religions talk about the God created the world, but nobody talks about how the God themselves were created. And if you look at the great rationalists like Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens, which are some of the famous names in the field of so-called atheism, they claim that there was this Pascal's wager about believing in God, and then there was this another of the Pascal's thing that if you are walking on the road and if you happen to find a watch, so you cannot but naturally think of the creator of the watch, the designer of the watch, and this is called the designer or the creator. But Richard Dawkins and others have been arguing that the watch is a very complex thing. It needs the very complex intelligence to produce something like a watch or a car or anything that we see around. It needs complex intelligence, and intelligence doesn't just evolve, just is not just created. So in order for that intelligence to arise to produce something like that, it also has to go through the process of what is called evolution. So they negate the concept of God like this, that if there is a God, it has to be something created and very complex, more complex than the world itself. And there is no evidence that such complex things is there in the universe or the world, because it's only human intelligence that has created the complex things, because the human intelligence itself is very complicated and it has not been created but has evolved, as we are going to look into as we move on this discussion. So those believe in God describe him as being who is omnipotent. So God is supposed to be all powerful, omnipresent, that he is present everywhere, he occupies everything in the universe, and that God is omniscient, he knows everything. And then there are certain moral qualities that are attributed to God, like God is good, God is just, and God is all loving. This we have all seen this sort of discussions in the society, that God is supposed to be omnipresent, omniscient.
Recording in progress.
And sort of scient, God as it knows everything. So the question is, did the blessed Lord accept God as the creator of the universe? That is a question. Did the Buddha accept the God as the creator of the universe? The answer is emphatic no. He didn't believe in the creation of the world. He believed, as Baba Ambedkar has gone and has recorded here, that the world is not created. The world has evolved. Likewise, the human beings are not created by some third agency. The human beings have evolved. And that the evolution is true has been proved by the scientific facts, and there are evidences which have created such havoc in the Christian world, as we have seen in the history of science, that when Darwin discovered that the species have evolved in his Origin of Species, that the complex forms of lives have been evolving over the period of time. And now there are a lot of proofs in genetics and a lot of proofs that have been offered, which proves very clearly that the world or even the human beings or life has evolved. So there is no creator who has created us, but that the life has evolved. And I think that's a very interesting sort of finding these days. So when Darwin proved that the life has evolved, he effectively dislodged the God from the so-called position of a creator. And the question that has been answered like this, that nobody has seen God. People only speak of God. Okay, so God, nobody has seen ever that the God exists, and nobody can prove that the God has created the world. The world has evolved and is not created. So, if you are trying to look at it from the point of view of profitability, whether the belief in the God leads to any profits, is there any profit in believing in God? So the Buddha, of course, has gone into this discussion, and he says that it's not profitable because the belief in the God is not based on the fact or the truth, but the belief in the God is based on what is called the speculation. Because of the speculation, because it is not founded on the fact, it leads to what we can say superstition. So anything speculative leads to superstition, and the blind faith, as we know, is very dangerous for the human beings. So Buddha just didn't leave the question there. He discussed the question in its various aspects. And on various grounds, he rejected the doctrine of the God. So the first argument that Ambedkar, the Buddha made, was that the God, the idea of the God, is not based on the reality. It's not based on a fact. There is no evidence that the God exists, and that it's based on speculation, and anything that is speculative leads to superstition. So this he made clear in his dialogue with Vasita and Bhardwaj. So these two gentlemen were there, and Buddha had a long discussion with these two Brahmins. And the discussion between the Buddha and the Brahmins is very interesting, and we are going to look at some of the aspects of it. The Brahmins claimed that there is a direct path to the Brahma, and that is what they said. Vasita said, various Brahmins, O Gautama, teach various paths. The Adhariya Brahmins, the Tittiriya Brahmins, the Kanchoka Brahmins, and Bihuvargiya Brahmins, they all lead those who act according to them into a state of union with Brahma. So the Brahmins, as we know, claim that there is something absolute which never changes, called Brahma, the sort of a prime substance from which everything has evolved, from everything has created, not evolved, because the Brahminist theories cannot go in accordance with the evolution. So the Buddha asked a counter question. Do you say that they all lead right? Do they lead really to the right thing? And Vasita said, I say so, Gautama. But Vasita, is there a single one of the Brahmins versed in the three Vedas who has ever seen Brahma face to face? So the Buddha is asking a question, because his idea was to teach, not to criticize. So Buddha will ask the question. So he's asking the question to Vasita. He's asking him that, please tell me, that has anybody ever seen the Brahma? Okay, let's accept that this path leads to Brahma, but is there any Brahmin who is versed in three Vedas?
Net problem.
Hello? Am I audible? Hello? Hello?
Some net problem is there, it seems.
Now is it solved?
Your side. Your side. Yeah, it is okay now.
Okay. So the Gautama said nobody has seen Brahma, and there is no perceptual knowledge about Brahma. That's what the answer Vasita gave to Gautama. He said that nobody has ever seen the Brahma. There is no perceptual knowledge about the Brahma. Now here we have to understand that the Buddha didn't ask people to believe which cannot be experienced, which cannot be seen, which cannot be heard, which cannot be, touched, which cannot be what is called experienced. So how do you know something that exists if it cannot be experienced? And that is what the Buddha says, that has anybody of you, of the Brahmins, has seen the Brahma? And the answer was no. Then here the dialogue stops here, but the Buddha goes on asking whether your father has seen, where your father's father has seen the Brahma, and the answer is no, that nobody has seen the Brahma. So because nobody has seen Brahma, there is no perceptual knowledge about Brahma. So it is said Vasita. So then the Buddha says, how then can you believe that the assertion of the Brahmins that Brahma exists is based on truth? Because nobody has seen the Brahma, so how can one assume that the Brahma exists? And then Buddha gives a very powerful simile of a blind leading a blind. And it's like a row of blind people. So he says, I think it's very beautiful. I'm going to read it. Just was it as when a string of blind men are clinging one to the other, neither can the foremost see, nor can the middle one see, nor can the hindmost see. Just even so, methinks Vasita, Is the talk of the Brahmin nothing but blind talk? So he's saying that the talk about the Brahma is nothing but a blind talk. The first is not, the middle one is not, nor can the latest one. The talk of these Brahmins turns out to be ridiculous, mere words of vain and empty things. You see, this strings of words is very important. So what is it? It's ridiculous because it's not based on fact. There is no evidence to prove that there is an existence of Brahma. Mere words. So you see, a lot of these philosophical things about God and all, they are mere words, they are mere stories. And sometimes those stories are so interesting that people just like them. Like, for example, many religions have the stories of the beginning, many religions have the stories of end, of what happens after death. And they are all stories, they are all speculative stories. There is no evidence that it is like that. There is no evidence what happens after death. Despite of that, people believe in the story, mere words. People believe in mere words, a vain and empty thing. There are many things that don't exist in the world, but we tend to believe. That's what the belief systems makes us believe. There are empty things. Is this not a case, Vasetta, of a man falling in love with a woman whom he has not seen? So somebody who has fallen in love with a woman who he has not seen, he says that I'm in love with the most beautiful women in the land. So somebody claims that they are in love with the most beautiful women in the land. And if you probe deeply into that, if you ask them which class she belongs to, what kind of a complexion she has, so the answer cannot be given. Just like that, there is this question of God. Like somebody claiming that most I am in love with the most beautiful women in the world, or most beautiful man in the world, or whatever. So this is just a concept. There is nothing like the most beautiful man or most beautiful women. These are just the way of saying things. So with regard to the origin of Mahabrahma, the so-called creator, the blessed Lord said, addressing Bhardwaj and Vasita, friends, that being who was first born thinks thus: I am Brahma, the great Brahma, the vanquisher, the unvanquished, the all-seeing, the disposer, the Lord, the maker, the creator, the chief, the assigner, the master of myself, the father of all that are and are to be. By me are these beings created. You see, the God is also making claims that I am this, I am so and so, and I am the father of everything. This means that the Brahma is the father of those that are and are to be. So, if the Brahma is the father of all, everybody, then the question arises, why are we who are created by that Brahma, have come hither all impermanent, transient, unstable, short-lived, destined to pass away? Why? If we are created by the Brahma, if he is our father, then why we have such a wretched life? Why the human beings suffer so much? If the creator is their father? To this, Vasetta had no answer, of course. His third argument had reference to the omnipotence of God. If the God is omnipotent and is also the efficient cause of creation, then because of this, man cannot have any desire to do anything. Because he's omnipotent, then who we are? What is our status? What are we here for? If the God is omnipotent and he has power over everything, he can do anything, then why do we need to do anything? And the fourth argument was that if God is good, then why do men become murderers, thieves, unchaste, liars, slanderers, abusive babblers, covetous, malicious, and perverse? Why do we become like that? If the God is, good, and he has created us in his image, or, if I assume the God as a female, her image, is this possible with the existence of God who is good? If the God is good, then why is it like this? Why there are murderers? Why there are people who are very malicious? His fifth argument was related to God being omniscient, just and merciful. If there is a supreme creator who is just and merciful, why then does so much injustice prevail in the world? Ask the blessed Lord. He who has eyes can see the sickening sight. Why does not Brahma set his creatures right? If his power is so wide that no limits can restrain, why is his hand so rarely spread to bless? Why are his creatures all condemned to suffering? Why does he not give happiness to all? Why do fraud, lies, and ignorance prevail? Why does falsehood trump over truth? Why does truth and justice fail? I count your Brahma as one of the most unjust who made a word only to shelter wrong. Very logical, argument. We did not need to give an explanation. If there exists some Lord or powerful to fulfill in every creature bliss or woe and action, good or ill, then that Lord is stained with sin. Either man does not work his will, or God is not just and good, or blind, God is blind. You see, these are all powerful arguments. And for the people who believe in the theistic religion, in the existence of God, these sort of arguments can come as a shock to them. That here is the Buddha who is trying to negate the God, who is trying to say that there is no higher agency than us. Than us means, than the processes of the evolution. So his next argument against the doctrine of God was that the discussion of this question about the existence of God was unprofitable. It is not profitable because according to the Buddha, the center of religion lay not in relation of man to God. That is not the center of relation as to how the man will relate to something fictitious like God. But it lay in the relation between man and man. How do we treat each other? The purpose of the religion is to teach man how he should behave towards other men so that all may be happy. That is the purpose of the religion. Not that, some kind of a relationship with the higher agency. There was also another reason why the Blessed One was against belief in the existence of the God. He was against religious rites, ceremonies, and observances. The Buddha declined the religious rites and ceremonies. He was against them because they were the home of superstition. And superstition was the enemy of Sammaditthi, the very first element of the Ashtanga Marga. So Buddha was, of course, Buddha taught Sammaditthi. And if you believe something speculative, that is against the seeing the world as it is, Sammaditthi. To the Blessed Lord, belief in God was the most dangerous thing. It was very dangerous thing because in everything, if there is an external locus of control, who we are, who or why, what for do we live? So for belief in God gave rise to belief in the efficacy of worship and prayer, and the efficacy of worship and prayer gave rise to the office of the priest, and the priest was the evil genius who created all superstition and thereby destroyed the growth of Sammaditthi. You see, so belief in the agents of anything, of God or any so-called higher powers leads to superstition. Sammaditthi has nothing to do with the speculation. Sammaditthi has to do with an individual seeing the world as it is, seeing the reality of himself, herself, or the world around. And that is what the Buddha recommended. So now these arguments that Baba Ambedkar has put in the Buddha and his Dhamma as coming from the Buddha, and they have a strong textual basis. And there are many places where the Buddha has, talked about it, but sometimes he remained silent because he knew that the person sitting in front of him might not understand or misunderstand. So of these arguments against belief in the existence of God, some were practical, but the majority of them theological. The Blessed Lord knew that they were not fatal to the belief in the existence of God. It must, however, be supposed that he had no argument which was fatal. There was one which he advanced, which is beyond doubt fatal to belief in God. This is contained in his doctrine of Praticca Samutpada, which is described as the doctrine of dependent origination. So you see, anything that arises in the world according to the science and also according to the Buddha must have causes and conditions. Without causes and conditions, nothing can arise. So everything originates depending on other things. Nothing can originate of its own, depending on causes and depending on the conditions. Like, for example, in the previous classes, I have given the example of a plant. You know, as a seed as a cause, the sprout comes into being. The sprout as a cause, the shoot comes into being. The shoot as a cause, then leaves and stems, and they as a cause leads to, you know, the fruit, the flower, the fruit, and the fruits again, you know, causes the seeds to arise. So these are the causes, one leading to another. And then there are conditions, like without the earth, without the soil, the plant cannot come into existence. Without the sky as a condition, the space to grow, it cannot grow. Without air, it cannot grow. Without sunshine as a condition, or the fire element, it cannot come into being. So there are causes and conditions. So everything that arises in the world has causes and conditions. And therefore, when we talk about this in terms of the general law of origination, that this is that is, this is not that is not, with the arising of this, that arises, with the suggestion of this, that suggests. And there is a small Pali formula that, you know, you can see. And this teaching of the Buddha is inscribed everywhere. This is the major finding of the Buddha, which you see written all over the places wherever you go in the Buddhist archaeological sites. E Dhamma hetu pabbhava, tesang hetu tathagato aho, tesang cha nirodho evam vadi mahasamano. Okay, this is the same formula that was repeated by Ashwajit to Sariputra, and Sariputra knew at once what is the Dhamma. And we see the instances of this formula getting repeated all over the places in the Buddhist world. Whether you go to Tibet, whether you go to China, whether you go to Sri Lanka, everywhere, anywhere you go, you see this formula being repeated. And this formula was the base by which the Pali Brahmi script, or, you know, the Ashokan script was deciphered. Such is the prominence of this formula. He Dhamma hetu pabbhava, tesang hetu tathagato aho, tesang cha nirodho evam vadi mahasamo. Same goes on in Sanskrit. What I recited is in Pali, but the same. Instead of Mahasamano, there will be Mahashraman, like that. So this doctrine of dependent origination, the chains of events, because nothing happened just like that, there are the chains of event. And we know that, for example, therefore it said that when it's raining, we don't say that somebody is raining. We say it's raining, because it's a process, because there are clouds, there are climatic conditions, it rains. Okay, we cannot see any entity as rains. It happens. Nobody is making it happen, you know, like that. There are causes and conditions. And it is a very deep sort of a teaching of the Buddha. But it's given in a very simplified model here. When Baba Ambedkar is writing this, very interestingly, he has brought this into play. And there are versions of Paticca Samutpada which claims that, you know, the Ishwara cannot be the cause of anything arising in the world. And it goes on proving this with a lot of arguments as to how the Ishwara cannot be the cause of, you know, arising of anything in the world. So this, we will look into it, because very logical. Sorry for that. Am I audible now? Hello? Hello? Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sorry about internet here. So let's look into this argument, which is like the main sort of an argument against the God as the creator. So according to this doctrine, the question whether God exists or does not exist is not the main question. So whether the God exists or does not exist is not the main question, nor is the question whether God created the universe the real question. The real question is, how did the creator create the world? The justification for the belief in God is a conclusion which follows from our answer to the question, how was the world created? So, this now the right answer, the right question is very important. People say that who created the world? God created the world. It's just mere words. Okay. So if the God created the world, how he created the world? That is the most important question. How this world was created by God? So there are only two possible answer to this question. The important question is, did God create something out of nothing, or did he create something out of something? So the question is, did God create this world out of nothing, or did God create this world out of something? Because there has to be something. If the God has created this out of nothing, as we will see, then the whole question is redundant. Where was God then? Who created him or her? You see, it is impossible to believe that something could have been created out of nothing. If there was nothing, how something was created? If the so-called God has created something out of something, then that something out of which something new was created has been in existence before he created anything. So it's like a regression, logical regression. If God says that I created something from B, then the B was already in existence. Who created B? And it goes on and on. We cannot find the answer to this question. Why? Because the world has evolved. It is impossible to believe that something could have been created out of nothing. If the so-called God has created something out of something, then that something out of which something new was created has been in existence before he created anything. God cannot therefore be called a creator of that something which has already existed before him. So if something has already existed, because if God has created something out of some stuff, and that stuff has already been in existence, we cannot say that a God was created of that something. And it goes into a circular logical this thing. A creating B is created out of C is created out of D is created out of E, and so on and so. There is no end to this. Such was his last but incontrovertible argument against believing the existence of God. Being false in premises, belief in God as the creator of the universe is not Dhamma, it is only belief in falsehood. That's how Baba Sahib Ambedkar ends this chapter on belief in Ishwara God is not essentially part of Dhamma. So we see that the idea of a God or the belief in God is very dangerous, that we have seen in the history of the humanity, in the history of the world, in the history of our country. Everywhere we go, we see that this idea of God has stopped the inquiry's mind. It stopped, as we have seen in the previous section, that we need this rational mind. We need the mind that inquires. We need people to have the spirit of inquiry. And if we believe in the superstition, or if we believe something that doesn't exist, then we naturally land up in what is called the superstitious domain. And we know that when there are superstitious domain, a lot of problems arise in the society. So I think that's a section on what is not Dhamma. Belief in Ishwara or a creator God is not Dhamma. And therefore we see that the way Baba Sahib Ambedkar has made efforts for his followers to come out of this false belief that there is some creator. And we have seen in the 22 vows that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has given, he has categorically rejected all these so-called pantheon of the gods, because they ultimately do nothing. They only create superstitious world. They only create superstitious ideas. And we know that the superstitious ideas have a power to create a lot of suffering in the world. So I will stop here with the comment of this section, and we will be open the class for the discussion for the further discussion. Anybody would like to comment anything?
Sir, I have one question in my mind regarding the verse number 16.
Verse number 16, okay.
The Buddha did not leave the question there. He discussed the question in its various aspects. And are the in the following verses that the question has been discussed, or something else is there to explore?
No, I think if we look at the Pali scriptures, there are many instances where the Buddha has denied the existence of God. And, that's what we can see. But like there is a Tevijja Sutta where the Buddha has denied the existence of Brahma or a creator God. And likewise, there are the Buddha denied the speculative questions like in the Chulla Malukya Putta Sutta or even Malukya Putta Sutta, the Buddha Vachakutta Sutta. So Buddha is what Buddha is trying to do here is trying to save us from the the operation of the words, the operation of speculative thinking. And it's not just the God, but Buddha is opposed to anything which cannot be experienced by the senses, which cannot be validated by reason, which cannot be proved, which cannot be expressed as the fact, isn't it? So in this section, Umesh Bhai, he has covered various grounds from various sutta, but elsewhere also the Buddha has asked his followers to be on the guard of the speculative thoughts.
Perfect. In other way, can we say this through human potential or through human efforts we can achieve something? Is it no?
Yes.
And my question is, to the extent of self potential one can see, can only visualize that boundaries, and the boundaries are beyond that also.
Yes. No, actually, the Buddha has said that whatever he has achieved through his human efforts. Hello. So
Yes.
nothing in the
Yes,
world
sir, yes, sir.
cannot be achieved without the human efforts. So he says human, the human bravery, the heroicism that he has achieved, whatever he has achieved.
Yeah. And lot of energy has gone in countering these blind faiths, I hope.
Yes. No, because these speculative thinkings have caused a lot of problems. No, because if you see the Vedic creationism, which is called the creationism, because the people believe that there is something produced by God. So if you look at this Prajapati or Brahma or whatever, this creationism is very strange because it doesn't talk about how the human beings came into being. It talks about how the Varna or the different classes of human beings came into being. It's more dangerous.
Yes, sir.
And then, this idea is made into a holy idea that people cannot question it.
Perfect.
And that is what has happened in the history of this country. That it's because the caste system is created ab initio from the Brahma itself. Who are you to challenge it? And we are the official priest or official agents of God, Brahmins.
Miss, the Chinese and Vietnamese people are lucky that they don't have to waste energy on such blindness and and following that Buddhism in its true spirit.
Yes. But even then, this idea of God enters into all the society, because in the history of the humanity, we didn't have those tools to know in the beginning. Now we have got tools to understand a lot of things, right? So people were just lost in the past, in the ancient world. People were just lost, and they believed anything. They believed in the tree gods. They believe in the sky gods. They believe in the earth gods. They believe on all sort of gods. And they believe that the earth is flat.
Yes.
And from
Yes.
there on, we have now came to the what is called the theory of evolution, which has conclusively proved that the species are not created by any god; they have evolved, and we can see the evidences are writ all over the places that there is nothing that lies outside the scope of the theory of evolution now.
Yeah, perfect, sir.
Now, for
I
example,
think
look
I
at
think that
the theory of relativity that Einstein proposed. It denied the existence of any absolute,
yes, sir.
except the speed of light as something absolute. Everything else is relative. And now even people claiming that even the speed of light is not so, whatever. But the one of the remarkable things about the Einstein's theory is that he proved that nothing is absolute in the world. There is nothing permanent in the world. Everything is relational. Everything is relative. Everything depends on the frame which we are occupying at that particular time.
Yes, sir. I think verse number 53 and 54 are the on these two verses that we have to take throughout our life means and we have to teach others also, means
Hmm.
we have to spread this message also.
Hmm.
I take today's take with me is 53 verse 53 and 54.
Yes.
Einstein said that he could postulate the theory of relativity from the cause and effect theory of Buddha.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Yes, perfect.
In this line only, since school days we used to learn energy neither be created nor be destroyed. Only it can be transferred from one form to another form. So whatever things are there in world, all are energies, and it cannot be created and neither be destroyed. So from this very basic principle, which is accepted worldwide, also suggests that world has evolved. Although during Buddha's time, I think conservation of energy was well known or well established, that I do not know. But later on, once we have accepted this one, that also suggests this there is no existence of God as such. It is world has been evolved. With this, now I would like to bring little bit more, this topic towards more what is called common public domain, what they used to talk about. Like this in our Buddhist text also, many places it is told like that. I will just recite. ए मे सुतम एकम समयम भगवा सवित विहृत वने जेत वने अनाथ पिंडक से आरामे अथको अयंत्रा देवता अभिकंत्या रत्या अभिकंतम केवल कप. Here what is that devata and another what is that Bhagwan, ekam samayam bhagwa. So the word Bhagwan is also used for Lord Buddha. And another, some concepts are there about devatas. So in terms of common people, they use this word very frequently, and in our text also we use this word very frequently. So from that point of view, how we should bring clarity so far as our nomenclature is concerned and their nomenclature is are concerned. Over to you.
So I think these are mere words, and Buddha has asked us to guard our minds from the words, and Buddha has to use certain words. So nobody has seen Devta. I think at least in our group, I have not seen the Devta. I don't know whether any of you have seen the Devta or Devas or Kinnaras or Gandharvas or whatever. We have not seen them. And there is a theory that they exist on a different planes of existences. But how do we know that? Because we have not transcended these planes of existences. Okay. So I think we have to go to the basic core teaching of the Buddha, that is of anatta, that whatever we construe as me, myself, and mine, and me superior than others, or me inferior than them, or me equal to them. This relativity of the self has to be understood. So when we are talking about these different planes of existences, the text says that there are different planes of existence, 31, 33 planes of existence they talk about, and they enumerate gods in all those spheres of existence. But I think we do not know, and the plausible answer will be that we have to do exactly what Baba Ambedkar has did when he said that these Nagas or Devas or Kinnaras or Gandharvas were the human communities. Just like today we have, Indians, we have Pakistani, we have Bangladeshi, we have Americans, all different communities there. Even in India, there are so many different communities and they have certain names, isn't it? Then there are rich people, poor people. So I think I will take these words as, they are Deva, Naga, Mahindika. So who are Devas, who are Nagas, who are Mahindikas? Akka Satta Cha Bhumatta, the gods on the earth and the gods on the sky. So I think we have to take them as a figurative, as something, the Buddha used, these words to communicate that, about the different human communities. And there is, of course, the Buddha himself said that, there is no God, there is no creator. The question ends there, isn't it? And the Paticca theory says that there is no, no creator God. There is nobody has created us. We have come from a simple process of every life arises. Similarly, how the things arise, we have now the theories which prove how the world has evolved, how the various gases have evolved, how the various elements have evolved, how those elements have congealed into so-called what is called the amino acid, the basic building blocks, and from there how proteins have emerged. So there are all these beautiful theories. We don't have to, go on talking about these words which were there 2,550 years ago, because we have not seen today any Nagas. Have anybody seen any Nagas? Or has anybody seen any Devas? We have not. But we have seen good people. We have seen people who are rich. We have seen people who live in forest. And there are references of people living in forest. We have seen that there are people who are cannibals. There are references of cannibals in the Pali. There are all sort of this Pali word is a beautiful word. And even if it's a beautiful word, we cannot let go the rationality of the Buddha. We cannot let go the spirit of inquiry into it. And even if there are devas which are existing, what it has to do with our suffering?
Yes.
Isn't it? So I think I will just leave those words, let them hang there. Let's not get so much intensified with them. Let's not get drawn into those words. Let them be just there. We just follow the course of study that Baba Ambedkar has taught us to conduct. Okay. Bhagava, for example, Bhagava means Bhagavasana or Bhagwan, Trishna. So what is Trishna? So, Trishna is a very deep word which has got many meanings in Pali. Because the Pali is the language of the Buddha, where a single word can communicate many meanings. Isn't it? So Deva has many meanings. Naga has many meanings. The Buddha says to the elephant Nalagiri that it is not good for a Naga to hurt other Naga. So here in this case, the Naga is elephant, because the nose of the Naga is like, it's like a hand. So it's called Nagahattin. It's like a snake. So it's called Nagahattin. So Naga has gone, the word Hatti has remained, isn't it? And like that. So you see, the words are having many meanings. They are polyvariant words, and the Buddha used the words in a particular context. So here, when he's celebrating this, for example, Ratan Sutta, where he says Akka Satta Cha Bhumatta Deva Naga Mahindika Puyang Tang Anumoditva Chiran Rakhantu, Sasanang or whatever. So, he is talking about the longevity of the Sasana. So in that context, we have to see that all communities, wherever they are,
Mhm.
So you see this, you have to read it in the context, and you don't have to stick to the words. We don't have to get drawn into the words so much that we forget the real intention of the Dhamma, that is to liberate ourselves from the suffering.
Yeah,
Here one
thank you so
just
much.
a thought came. Let me allow to share it.
Well,
We are struggling to establish the names of the God, means all those philosophies, and even the people are not wondering that there are thousands and thousands things on the earth, and all are having the names. Who has given those names?
that is the problem of naming. No, that's what Buddha says. Naming everywhere. Nama all over the places. We are all entangled in nama. Only designations,
Yes.
only naming. All the time this process of naming is going on. All the time the process of nama is going on. Nama word comes from namati. Namati means tending towards. So our minds always tend towards naming the things. And this tendency to name the things creates a lot of problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like what Baba Ambedkar says in Annihilation of Caste, the problem of labels. The caste is also a problem of a label. You put a certain label to certain people.
Perfect.
It's very deep, but very easy to understand. All the time we are trying to name. All the time we are trying to designate something by sound, by concept, which we don't need to do that. And then we get entangled in that concept and those sounds and names, don't we?
Yes, and then we draw the characteristics of all those things.
Yes. All right. Any other points?
Uh, this is Vidyanand. I see in let's say cave paintings, there are images of like celestial being carrying those sculptures and all that. And likewise, there is one sutta. I guess it is, if I am correct, it is Atanatiya Sutta. I'm not sure whether it is right pronunciation. So it also talks about celestial, non-celestial, supernatural beings. So this is, in my opinion, does not seems to be in consonance with the philosophy what uh, Buddha has mentioned. So how we are going to answer it and look from which perspective, how we should look at it.
See, the Buddha inhabited a particular world where all these belief systems were going on.
Mhm,
Okay, now today we inhabit a very different world.
mhm,
There is an internet, there are computers, there are whatnot. So we have a certain worldview, and we use that worldview to talk about certain things. So the question is, the Buddha inhabited certain customary, certain cultural world. So he is talking in terms of those figures. But is he making those figures a center of his doctrine? Never. He
no.
said that I only teach two things: dukkha and the dukkha nirodha. That's it. Isn't it? Has Buddha ever claimed that he's talking about the celestial being as the essential, or where the Buddha says that you have to trust in this celestial being or in this apsaras or God or whatever? Never. Has Buddha ever said that there is a third agency that will come and liberate you? Never. So what we are doing, we are missing the core and going in the peripheries. Isn't it? The ultimate message of the Buddha is that you are your own nath. Attai attano natho. Has Buddha ever said that one Naga will come and liberate you, or one Kinnara will come and liberate you, or Apsaras will come flying all over the places?
No.
Okay.
Okay, one small query also. This the stories which are mentioned in Jatak Kathas, what about those? Because that also talks about something which is not so much verifiable.
Yes, but they are
Maybe
called
as a
Jataka
moral story,
Katha.
that is okay, but
They are called Jataka
yeah,
Katha. They are already
Jatak Katha.
dedicated with Jataka Katha stories, right?
Yes,
So it's a
but
genre
how
of,
far we should accept as a true as a historical event, the way Buddha's life has been considered as a historical event.
no, for
Because in
example,
Buddhist culture, we used to tell that Buddha was the 28th number Buddha, which uh, the way Jain people used to tell, no? Same way we also tell that Siddhartha Gautama was the 28th Buddha. So in
see,
this way, they previous to him, there were 27, and that stories have been depicted in Jatak Kathas. So what is your comments on it?
no, the comment is simple. There are various ways to communicate. Now, today we have people singing songs, people producing movies, there are dramas, there are serials, there are whatnot. Right? There are all different ways of presenting the things. Isn't it? So Jataka are the stories, moral stories. And at the end of every moral story, there are, takeaway. So Buddha will tell a story and then he will tell you the takeaway. So what is the takeaway of the Jataka stories as to how we should live our life, how we should practice paramitas. So these stories, we cannot put them aside, because I particularly like very much Jataka stories because they are the stories of wisdom. They are not like epics that we have to believe in them. They are not something that, but if we read the Jataka tales carefully, what happens is that we get some very deep teachings, which is not possible just by the narrative ways or the sutta ways. Sutta is one form of teaching. Then there are Gatha form of teaching. Then there are technical forms of teaching, like Abhidhammic form of teachings. There are the story forms of teachings as we get in Jataka. So, it's like watching a serial. So Buddha is telling you a story and communicating to you the deep values. How beautiful is that? Isn't it? Do we have to believe that the Buddha was born in Varanasi and he was monkey that time and he was this that time? Because, the story is the media. But what is the ultimate aim of every Jataka story?
Same thing this India is facing now. महाकाव्यों में जीवन ढूंढना तब जीवन ढूंढ रहे हैं, जबकि जीवन महाकाव्यों से जीवन कैसे लेना था वो ढूंढना चाहिए था. The morals we have to take it.
Yes.
And now we are establishing its historical milestones.
Yes. No, you look at the talent of the Buddha,
Yeah.
collecting 500 stories and teaching through them. He's a talent, he's a teacher for excellence. Come, today I will tell you the story. Jataka tells, they are called a Katha, Jataka Katha. So Katha is a form of it's a genre, like rock, pop, whatever genre we get in the music today. Then Buddha has taught in terms of the question and answer, Q&A. He will ask you questions. He will try to know about your views. Then he will try to tell his views. Then sometimes he will just, burst into poetry. Udan, he cannot stop himself, but just burst into poetry. Sometimes he will go into technical details. A plus B is equal to what? You got it? These are all genres to teach.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Welcome. All right, then we have already reached to the end of a class. If there is nothing from any of you to share, we will end our class today. Or anything, final comments or anything anybody would like to say?
I have one comment to make. Like
Vidhan bhai.
what I can, what I can grasp from this discussion. It's like, in my opinion, God somewhere is a creation by human mind, where human mind looks for certain hope, and in that pursuit of hope, the creation of something, because he has certain fears right from the history of human evolution, how societies have, every time man has certain sort of fear, and to get rid of that fear he needs certain hope, and in that hope, in that process, perhaps the creation of god or something supernatural being has come up. And there are two ways of it. One is like, uh, by the creation of god, the stories which are told are the stories of morality, are the stories which can connect an evolved society, are the stories, and that's one conception of it. And there is another conception which I can borrow from this discussion, is like, uh, uh, is being used by the people for their own benefit. So there we need to separate these two things. So in a process of historical inquiry, or the way, let's say, society gets trapped in that, like, if we are trying to discuss the most of the things in Buddhism, let's say Jataka tale or other, there is also a danger to it that this may also been interpreted by a wrong view of world. uh, so how we are going to defend that conception? I guess I'm able to clear my thought. Mhm.
Anything?
Believing in God is against the cultivation of samadhi. This is the ultimate.
Good.
In a year or so, I have written one paper called as Play of Gods in Pali Canon. If you have time, then you can browse through it. I have shared in group. The main thing which differentiate from common man to Devata's references in Pali Canon are that Devata were in much bondage to delusion and desire as a human beings, and they were need of guidance by the enlightenment, that is from the Samyak Sambuddha. And gods, the devas, were constantly being schooled by the Buddha. And this is the most characteristic of dialogue where the God presents an idea which is really good and but it is within a limited worldview. But Buddha, when he preaches, he elevates to an entirely different new level. So Buddhists do not look to the gods for teachings. Rather, the Buddha is the teacher of gods and humans. That's why we call Buddha as Sattva Deva Manusanam. And there are many other points, interesting discussion. As we are running short of time, I would like to ask many people to go through the paper, and I welcome the comments. Thank you.
Okay, very good, Richa. Please share your paper. And I think thank you so much for all of you to join in today. And we will continue our study of the Buddha and his Dhamma in the next week. Thank you so much. Jai Bhim.